The sequence. The magnificence of music resides within its chord progression. Even Mozart once said to the emperor that no note could be omitted from a piece. The human body is also made of a genetic sequence called DNA, and thus we cannot neglect the existence of that sequence of pre-established facts we call fate. But if everything is decided in advance by fate, we tend to think that the efforts we deploy every day are in vain. Fate is one of the most important aspects and themes of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure as a whole, and it's tied to many characters and their motivations, but one of the characters I feel that fate has shackled itself to the most is Scolippi.
我々はみんな運命の奴隷なんだよ。それが僕の能力、ローリングストーンズの意味なんだ。
Scolippi is the last but technically the first stand battle of Vento Oreo, and his arc is probably one of the most important when it comes to the fate of the Passion members. His namesake comes from an Italian meat dish called scallopine, which consists of thinly sliced meat, often veal, pork, or chicken, which is dredged in wheat and then sautéed. The sauce usually varies from the part of Italy you're in, but since he's from the Naples part of Italy, I would probably bet it's going to be some tomato wine redux. Now, when you look at his overall character design and his character, you notice he's very Christ-like. He has long dark hair with a crown of thorns and a stigmata-esque wound delivered to him by Mista during his interrogation. Along with his design, he has also dedicated himself to seeking out people his stand targets and tries to set them at peace with his ability. He also wants to be there for them because they may have some questions while they accept their own death. It also appears no matter how much Mista beats, shoots, or threatens him, he still doesn't seem to hold any ill will towards him or his boss. In fact, he only wants to help Bucciolati. Now, when we look at his profession, he was a sculptor. Nothing famous but good enough to make a living off of it. Now, if we look at a similar profession to sculpting, we find carpentry, which was the profession of Christ. He also idolized people like Michelangelo di Lodovici Burotti Simoni, who also is known as just Michelangelo. He's an artist and sculptor very well known for doing things such as the Statue of David and Christ Piete, which is the only statue that Michelangelo ever signed. But in specific, Scolippi was respecting the ideals of Michelangelo more than anything else. In his creation of the Statue of David, Michelangelo was quoted as saying, "The sculpture is already complete within the marble block. Before I start my work, it's already there. I just have to chisel away the unnecessary materials." This idea of preordained sculptures fated to be sculpted is reflected in Scolippi's stand, Rolling Stones. Rolling Stones is an uncontrollable automatic stand which is a large round boulder with a giant kyo on it. The kyo is kanji for misfortune and bad luck. It gets the name from the English rock band Rolling Stones. It's also possibly coming from their album also called Rolling Stones. But it's not the magazine The Rolling Stone because there is no stones in the Rolling Stone. Now the stats for Rolling Stones are destructive power none, B in speed, A in range, A in durability, precision is E, and developmental potential is also none. The main ability of Rolling Stones is fated to die target stalking. In the simplest terms, it's when someone, assumably within its range, is fated to die soon. Then their form will be shaped within the stone of Rolling Stones, and from there on, the stone will begin to follow you everywhere you go until you touch it. It can go through walls, it can basically teleport. And the closer it gets to you, the more damage it will have taken over the time of getting to you, and will begin to show an image of the target, or you, during your death. Now, when the target comes in contact, they will be willing to die. But the death will be painless and peaceful. But while the stone is on the chase, those close to the stand's target are immune to death as well. This is because fate is protecting them specifically because they are not the ones ordained to die. And this only lasts until the target of Rolling Stones is dead. Also, if the Stone of Rolling Stones is touched by someone outside of the person fated to die, they will begin to see the words murder and hear it. It's also possible that if they do this, they are then fated to murder the target of Rolling Stones. It's also possible that if the stone is shattered, that Rolling Stones will stop pursuing the target, but that target's fate will then extend to people close to them. Scolippi's development of his stand when he was only a child is possibly the reason that led to him never being able to control it, but it's also due to the fact that it's forged out of the idealization of the ideas of fate expressed by Michelangelo. And the fact that this stand goes out of its way to take pity on those victims, those fated to die, by giving them a painless, sufferingless death, is in reference, I believe, to the Piete, the only statue that Michelangelo ever signed. It's probably one of his most well-known ones. Now, the major importance of this stand and the Sleeping Slaves arc altogether is that Mista, the luckiest man alive, without realizing it, dooms his friends to their now set-in-stone fated deaths. Because, you see, the stone originally was only reflecting Mista gunning down Buccioletti's body during the Chariot Requiem arc. This is because he touched the stone and then was branded the murderer. Though, ironically, because he leapt from the building with the stone in hand, he made himself immune to the stand's fate-spreading ability. Also, it's possible that since he landed on Fugo's car and Fugo was in it, that's also why Fugo wasn't fated to die either. But when the stone was shattered, fate was spread out to the Passion members that Buccioletti was really close with. Scalipi points out in doing this, willingly throwing one's own well-being out the window to save a friend, Mista changed fate in a way. And even though this new fate will bring more suffering to his gang, this suffering will birth the beginning for someone special. This someone is a sleeping slave who will awaken. And this sleeping slave will go onwards to create a meaningful future for everyone. And this is why the rest of Passion were basically protected from fate. Mista and Fugo were protected by the fact that they came in contact with the stone, and Giorno and Trish were protected by the fact that they weren't part of the gang until the Sleeping Slaves arc was over, and couldn't possibly be connected by fate yet. So basically, you can thank Mista for defeating Diavolo. And if you enjoyed this video and want to help me create a meaningful future for the rest of us, like making more videos just like this, I have a Patreon over at patreon.com/ManyNotTheBadGuy. And if you want to create a meaningful future for yourself, you can buy Shimonetta at Funimation.com/Shimonetta. Or Boring World where the concept of dirty jokes doesn't exist, Shimonetta. Yeah, and have a lovely day.